All right. Here we are, back again, back again. So, I have done a couple videos on the One Ring today and a couple of music reactions. And now I'm going to do a little bit of live stream before my nephew shows up. And I don't know. I think who does Fridays nights? Somebody else might have live streams on Friday night. Uh, but I don't remember. Okay, we've got, well, Double D's been hitting it hard this last week. Well, I don't see anyone on my list. So, okay, cool, 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 cool. So we'll just wait and see who shows up. Well, there's George. Hi, George. How are you doing? Um, I just did some One Ring content and some music content, and now I'm drinking some ice water and some guava flavored energy drink, Monster Energy drink. I'm not. This was provided to me by my wife, so that is my sponsor. And I like the guava, but I think the tangerine is better, or the guava is better. I can't make my mind up. It's like doing good, great. It's Friday, right? So everybody's working for the weekend. Yeah, you know. Everybody wants a second chance. Right? I don't actually know the words to that song. I gotta admit I was just making some of it up. Tucker Carlson did an interview on an Orthodox channel. Well, he better stop talking to those Orthodox Christians or he'll become one. That's how it works, you know? It's for the vast majority of people I've ever encountered, it's like the more you talk to Orthodox people, the more likely you are to convert. Uh, Plus, it's easy, especially if you're Roman Catholic. It's super easy because there's not that much separating you, except for a couple of heresies that some various Roman bishops decided to do back in the day. But at the end of the day, so I will have to look that up for sure. Uh, I'm a fan of Tucker Carlson, even though he was definitely born with a silver spoon in his mouth and everything like that. Somehow, even though he was born super rich and all that sort of stuff, Orthodox Ethos, name of the channel. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Even though he was born rich to a wealthy family and all that, he really comes across as like a genuine, decent guy, like the kind of guy that you would want to hang out with, drink a beer with, maybe go fishing with. Hey, Dean Powell, how are you? How are you, my good man? Uh, or as they say in Scandinavian, Inad Nuden Baba, like the Swedish shelf. Bork, bork, bork. Bork, bork, bork. I'm getting a lot of messages and I don't know where my phone is. Crazy. Still job hunting. Well, you know what the Smiths had to say about that. If you don't, it goes a little bit like this. I was happy in the haze of a drunken hour, but heaven knows I'm miserable now. I was looking for a job and then I found the job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now in my life. Why do I give valuable time The people who would much rather see me die. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that's right. The Smiths. If you don't know who the Smiths are, I don't know how to help you with that. It's a sad situation, is what I would call it. It's like, how could you not know who the Smiths are? They're one of the greatest bands of all time. I mean, right? But anyway, I keep hearing my phone binging. I just don't know where the hell it is. I'll figure it out later. Link is in if anybody wants to roll the dice and play the game. Might start running the One Ring on alternating. If a double-decker bus crashes into us, to die by your side, well, the pleasure, the honor is mine. Yeah. Music of my childhood, guys. And by childhood, I mean when I was in my 20s, because I kind of got into the Smiths and the Cure and all that. Probably, I think when I was in the Army is when I encountered it for the first time, because growing up, all I listened to was country, western, and bluegrass gospel. That was it. And Pink Floyd was part of it, and Black Sabbath. And that was pretty much it. That was the extent of a lot of my musical whatever. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff. I know riding around at the age of 16 listening to Straight Outta Compton happened, and Licensed to Ill. But yeah, so maybe it wasn't just what I said, but man, I used to love me some Hank Williams Jr. and Sr. Seganola 2. Hello, I just recently found your channel and can already tell that your content is great. Love to stick with you long term. If you're open to it, I'd be willing to connect with you on Discord. Yeah, by all means, you're welcome to the Discord. And if you have a YouTube channel, you might want to join live streams on YouTube, because then everybody can see you type. Also, I don't have a lot of content anymore since I deleted like 5 or 6 years of it. But I've started putting it back up. I did a couple of music reviews and a couple of game book reviews today. So the next game book review I'm going to do will probably be a double. It'll be Moria by Free League, and I might do a short little thing on Rivendell, since the Rivendell book is just a little kind of, it was inserted into the players or the GM screen, but still it's a complete map of Rivendell and the area around Rivendell. And that if the player characters ever choose to head to Rivendell for some reason, and they might, then yeah. Now, my reviews, I usually don't go into a great amount of detail, because I feel like it's the same as spoilers. You know what I mean? Raptor Jesus, Altered Games, afternoon, fellas. Afternoon, Raptor Jesus. I hope you are doing well. I hope everything is awesome. I am waiting for packages to arrive from Scandinavia, and that always takes a long time. So mainly I ordered a bunch of card sleeves for my Vampire the Eternal Struggle cards. It is set a few years after The Hobbit, Bilbo has come home. I believe he's adopted Frodo, but he's still, maybe in his 80s or 90s. It's still a bit before Frodo will leave with the ring. But the core book allows you to set it whenever you want. And my suggestion has always been if you want to play the One Ring, but you want to play during the War of the Rings, then there is no reason to replace the actual characters from the book with your player characters, your players' characters, in one way or another. But in the era that it's currently set in, it's so wide open for your characters to be the main draw, the main characters of the story, especially if they're playing Rangers. Because during this time, Strider and the Rangers of the North, for the most part, are spending all of their time north of the Shire trying to hold the shadow back from Angmar. So the players can choose to play a Dunedain Warden, which is pretty much what kind of what Strider would have been, or Isildur, or Aragorn, or whatever you want to call him. And so, yeah, you could have a lot of fun playing with Rangers and elves, As one of the videos, if you look, Adventures in the Lone Lands, it's 6 adventures all set north of the Shire and all about pretty much protecting the Shire from the shadow. So it involves fighting with all the enemies that you love from Tolkien and then some. I mean, there's bandits, there's half orcs that look human enough to pass as ugly humans. So they're infiltrating places like Bree. There's actual orcs. There's just all kinds of monsters. But not only that, like I said in the video, there's actually talking sentient otters in that region. Now, most of you might remember that I am an otter fanatic. I think river otters are like one of the coolest things ever. So you can do it anytime. I mean, the core book tells you that every rule, all the characters, everything could be used pretty much at any time during the Third Age.
Hey, all.
How you doing?
How you doing, man?
Living the dream, living the dream. My nephew's coming down tonight, and we're probably going to spend the whole weekend playing board games, and then Sunday we'll play Vampire. And
Excellent.
he already has a character, so if he's going to be here Sunday night, I don't know, because he might have to leave Sunday to get back up there, because I think his boat is going out on, for their 3-month cruise or whatever they do. Because they're like 3 months out, 3 months back, or something like that most of the time. So,
Wait, what are they doing?
he is the officer in charge of the nuclear reactor on a boomer.
Oh, very sweet.
Yeah, he just got promoted to O2. So, and the kid's only like 24 or 25. So he's doing good. But anyway, we were talking about the One Ring, and yeah, George, you can set it at any time. The core book specifically tells you if you want to set it before Bilbo leaves, during the War of the Rings, whatever, you can do it. Like if you want to set it in the Fourth Age, the only big difference is that you won't be able to play elves, because during the Third Age, the elves are gone, and most of the halflings are gone too. Because the halflings just kept getting taller and taller until you couldn't tell them from humans. So, that would be a much more human-centric game, a Fourth Age game. but the shadow would still be there. Even though the ring is destroyed, Sauron is not. It's just he's so much less powerful that it's not like he's ever going to be able to threaten the actual world again. He's more of a formless evil ghost, just kind of floating about on the wind, you know.
Did you ever see I think he wrote 1 or 2 chapters. Tolkien was going to do a sequel to The Lord of the Rings. It was called A New Shadow. But then he like wound up like kind of losing interest in it because he was like, he felt it was just going to be like kind of a generic fantasy novel, and he didn't want to do that.
Right.
But it was interesting. He wrote like 1 or 2 chapters for it, and it was going to be around something that was going on like towards the end of Aragorn's son's reign.
Right.
And so it had something to do with some like cult of Sauron that was like popping up.
There's always that cult of Sauron. If you read the Silmarillion, that's what sunk Numenor. Is they defeated Sauron in the war and they drug him back to Numenor in chains. And then within a year, he was the king's right-hand man and advisor. And then they started building temples to Morgoth, you know, because Sauron was having them doing it and doing sacrifice and stuff. And then Sauron put the Numenorians up to invading the lands of eternal life, you know, where the elves are. And they did, and it pissed the main god of the world off so bad. He sunk Numenor straight to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, the only time he ever directly intervened.
Yep, because he was like, "Yep, enough of this shit."
Yeah, and you can do a lot with Middle Earth as a background. I and some friends I played a lot of Middle Earth campaigns where we did like crazy stuff. We did completely like alternate War of the Ring campaigns. We did stuff in the Second Age where they were all like Numenorian sailors. I mean, there's all manner of things you can do with that setting if you want to like break away from like the set.
And I suggest you do that actually. If you're going to play the One Ring, or MERPs, if you're super old school and you have it, the lore that Tolkien wrote, that's just a guide. That's not like a freaking straitjacket that you've got to wear, you know? Yeah, during the Fell Winter, the White Wolves invaded. Is that when Bullroar knocked the head of a goblin off?
Yeah, I believe that's
with the big club. Yeah. And then they say that's how Goth was invented because the head flew like 100 yards and went down a rabbit hole. And yeah. So
yeah, there's all manner of stuff you can use that background for.
That's why Rings of Power is so good. Shut up, Raptor Jesus.
Oh. Is there some way we can electrocute someone remotely for say
I wish, right?
Things?
Like, I don't know what happened to this guy. If you think Rings of Power is good, my first thought is, who hurt you? Who hurt you so bad that you're that traumatized?
You know, the thing, I only watched 2 episodes of that, but the thing that really strikes me about that, they sunk the better part of $1 billion into this fucking thing. It looks like shit.
It looks like
shit. You know, the
armor is all wrong.
It looks like a crappy TV movie. So where did all that money go? Somebody is robbing those bastards.
Crack or something.
There's some shenanigans.
It's like the person they got to play Galadriel just absolutely sucks. The way they have wrote her, she acts more evil than Sauron does.
Yeah, and that ridiculous girl boss routine.
Yeah.
That's not what she was about. That's not what made her powerful.
That's not who Galadriel is. Oh, and they ignore the fact that she was married to Celeborn at the time. You know, he's in the movie, but they're acting like they want him to, you know, have some kind of gay relationship with Sauron. It's like really weird. And then almost all the elves have short hair. You know, the guy they got to play Elrond looks like Doogie Howser. It's like so, and Gladriel was never a warrior. She was always like, you know, this really wise counselor, you know, magical, whatever. They just so you should follow the word. Hey, no, because in your role playing game, that only affects you and your players. You can do whatever you want. But if you are making entertainment for the masses based on a literature that is basically culturally defining, you should follow the frickin' lore. These are two different things, Raptor.
Very different circumstances.
Very different, you know? So, yeah, they effed it up. And the whole idea of the orcs, do we gotta go to war again? And the orcs got like a ugly little wife and an ugly little orc kid.
Orc spud baby.
Right? And it's like, I guess a lot of people were like, oh my goodness, orcs have babies and stuff. Like that was shocking to me. I'm just thinking, well, that's 3 to kill. Kill the mom, the dad, and then stomp the baby orc skull in. Because I do not have any sort of moral quandaries about murdering orcs. Hell, I don't even think it's murder because I'm not 100% sure they even have souls. So, you know, and Tolkien argued about it, but he never quite definitively made up his mind, you know?
Yeah, he was kind of conflicted about it himself. He's like, on one hand, they're kind of meant to be inherently evil, but then the whole...
I'm a hardcore Roman Catholic, and I hate to think that anything could be irredeemable. So
so he like struggled along with that himself, but it's
he had a lot to deal with himself on that. Plus, he gave him like 3 different creation mythos. So yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Depending which part of the Lord of the Rings or the Silmarillion or whatever you're reading, you're going to get different.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the Wheel of Time stuff, but I've heard it's absolutely atrocious. Did you read any of those books?
They did the same thing in the Wheel of Time. They turned it into like a girl boss kind of bullshit. They made the characters way older than they should have been. And I mean, yeah, it was just dumb. It was just stupid. I hope, what's his name? Robert Jordan or whatever. I hope he got a lot of money.
Oh, he's dead.
TM Cody, how you doing, homie?
He never even finished the series. Brandon Sanderson had to step in and do the last 2 books.
Well, because I think if I remember correctly, him and his wife got divorced. And she had been co-writing that series with him.
Yeah. Well, she was his editor. I don't know how much of the writing she did, but she was heavily involved in the production.
Right.
And she edited the Brandon Sanderson one. She had, I think, is the one who like asked him to do it. He was relatively unknown at the time.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the Wheel of Time Die 20 game.
Never played. I played a campaign in my game that a friend who was really into Wheel of Time put together, but I never played like the official game at all.
Yep. There was an official D20 game for Wheel of Time, and it introduced one of the coolest things that has never been in any official D&D game, and that is that as fighters advanced in level, not only did they get attack bonuses, they got armor class bonuses.
Is it like a D? It's what is it? D20?
It's 3rd edition.
Oh, it's 3rd. Oh, okay.
It's basically 3rd edition, except some classes as they level up, basically martial classes. In addition to the bonus to attack, they got a bonus to AC. So a 10th level fighter had like plus 10 to their AC.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know really 3rd edition. I played a little bit of like the video game versions of Pathfinder.
Right.
But I don't really know 3rd edition. That's probably the one I know the least well, actually, is 3rd edition. Like, one of the things I know is about 5th edition, which I think is really shit, is basically the whole just roll to hit the enemy armor classing. It's like you're making the martial classes, like, they're no better than, like, the wizards at fighting. I mean, granted, they're going to be spec'd in a different way that's going to make them a bit better, but it's like you're completely just, like, neutering them and making it almost pointless to play them.
See what a lot of people, and I agree, GM Cody. A lot of and GM Cody, the link's there if you want to jump in. A lot of people, they think bounded accuracy was a good idea. I disagree entirely. Bounded accuracy is not a good idea, and that's basically where the armor class of every monster goes up at kind of the same rate as the attack bonus of the players goes up. So, and it's like, no, I much prefer AD&D's style, which is, it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't
And
see what
you
people's
deal
problem
with it.
with the THACO system is. I mean, if you want to make it
I don't know.
ascending instead of descending, fine. But I mean, it's a good system. It's a solid system, and I don't see why people have this big hang up with it.
I agree, Raptor, and I agree with what you just said, Doc. I have never understood the issue. It's not hard. If you know what your THACO is, then you can. Well, if your DM tells you the armor class of what you're fighting, then you know what you need to roll. I rarely do. I rarely tell players in any game that I'm running what they need to hit. I will describe the monster and what armor they're wearing. So if a player sees an orc or something like that wearing a chainmail hauberk, they can kind of guess about where that armor class might be. But I'm not going to say, okay, roll to attack versus armor class 4.
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
just
doing
like that in games a lot. I don't like a lot of like technical stuff having to go back and forth, like between the game master and the players. It's just kind of immersion breaking to me. I'm not like to the fourth, like with the 4D extremists where it's like it's never to be brought up under any circumstances. But I think that should be minimized.
it. Yeah, you try to run the game with the rules, but keep the rules as much in the background as possible so that the players can focus on the action.
Yeah,
Like
'cause, I mean,
what is actually going on here.
that's what fundamentally separates it from a war game.
Right. Because otherwise, you could just play Frostgrave or any of the other wonderful skirmish games that are out, Saga or whatever, and be like, okay. I mean, Frostgrave is practically a role playing game because you build a wizard, you choose the spells, you get an apprentice, you build your warband, and then you and your opponents, up to 4 we've played with, journey into a ruined city trying to find treasure and kill monsters and each other if that's the thing you want to do.
Yeah, there's a game very similar to that. It's pirate based. It's called Port Royale,
Yep.
which is very
Yep.
interesting. I haven't played. I've watched some of those. It looks really interesting. Skirmish games are hugely fun too. It's a different thing.
Well, the thing with Port Royale, though, is for the money, what you get is pretty amazing. Like, for the price, you get that hard molded plastic brigandine or whatever, and you get like your actual crew. And I mean, it's
Yeah, they set you up with everything you
at
need.
least in my opinion, it's not as expensive as I thought it would be, for some of the stuff you get. I mean, I'm sure if like they eventually release like a frigate or something, that'll probably cost a couple $100, but at 28 mil scale, it would, I mean, it'd be a 1.5 foot long ship, at least. But personally, I roll all the dice as DM. I only do that when I'm running Hungar in a 1-on-1. And
Yeah, I've tried doing that. I did one campaign. We didn't keep it up for the whole campaign. One thing I did where I basically kept all the numbers and everything away from the players. They had I had their regular character sheet with the numbers on it, and they got one that just had like descriptions of like your like professional level of the skill, stuff like that. You're very strong. I just wanted to basically keep all the math and mechanics out of sight, and it was interesting. But the players liked rolling their own dice and
right.
and seeing their stuff. So we eventually went away from it. But it was an interesting experiment.
Well, like Cody just said, that's how I am. 100%. It's like if I run AD&D, I use THACO, and I just don't tell the players what they need to hit. I know because I know the orc's got an armor class of 6. So I know if the guy rolls his die and he's a fighter and he rolls above a certain number compared to a Stacko, he hits. And I can just tell him, you slash with your sword, striking the orc, roll damage, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
And they'll
And a
figure
lot
it out quickly enough if they're interested, just from what happens.
it's not hard. I think that modern people are stupid. And I hate to say that, but Thaco was something I figured out when I was like 13 or 12.
Yeah, I was never confused by that, even as a kid.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, okay.
so-
And even if you don't get it, there's a chart. It's this
Right.
freaking big that covers everybody. Yeah, it's
Yeah, even if
not a
you don't
problem.
get it, at the bottom of your character sheet is literally a row that starts at 0 and goes minus and plus. And all you got to do is write the number down. And then you got it. I mean, it's like you don't even got to do math. You're like, if the DM says, what do you need to hit like 0? And you're like 19. Well, then the DM knows to hit arm class 6, you're going to need a 13. Okay. I mean, and if you're a fighter with +2 because of your strength, then now 11. I mean, it's not hard.
I think we're going to have to zap George, too, now.
What does a AD&D DM eat for lunch? A taco. Yeah. Like
Taco
a taco,
Thursday.
but with math. You had a song for taco? Latinx orcs want us to believe. Right. But on the other hand, when I run Old School Essentials Advanced, I use Ascending Armor Class. Because, I mean, you can use Thaco if you want, or you can just use Ascending. And a lot of my newer players came into the game during 3rd edition. So it's just easier. But when I run AD&D, it's Thaco all the way. And some of them get all aggravated because, like I said, they came in during 3rd and some of them 5th. They're like, I don't understand why I've got to roll like 12 different types of dice to do different things. It's like I got to roll high for some things and low for some things, and I don't get it. And I'm like, don't worry about it. You don't need to, where I crack out you were not brought upon this earth to get it. It just, I'll tell you what to roll, and you roll, and that's it. That's how this works, And like in the vampire game, it's super easy. The storyteller says you need a 2 to do a thing. I roll a handful of dice, and as long as I get 2 successes, I'm good. Okay. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, man. Those are the food of conquerors. Yep. I do love me some AD&D. And I did make the argument on Double D's show that when they were talking bad about the Ranger, that if you wandered your ass into the wilderness of Appalachia without a ranger, like let's say in a fantasy setting, but that terrain, you would die. If you were a bunch of fighters from some town and you decided, hey, we're going to cross this mountain range, yeah, you die. 50-50 shot, dead, So Rangers are important.
The early edition Rangers were better characters, too. In the later edition, they kind of made them kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, they made them dumb. The early edition where the Rangers' whole deal was tracking and foraging for food and being really good at finding places to set up camp. I mean, that's what a Ranger does.
Yeah.
And Old School Essentials Advanced, that's what a Ranger does. And if you don't want to play a Ranger, play the Barbarian because they're the same way. They get a bunch of outdoor survival skills. So, like the Ranger and Old School Essentials, for every day you're traveling, they can roll a die to see how much food that they forage along the way. And they are much, much less likely to get lost. They're more likely to find safe places. I mean, all the things you want. Because if you're talking about a group of people who've only been in an urban environment, and you chuck them out in the middle of like a rocky forested hillside,
they're going to be absolutely helpless.
They will be helpless. And then, like I was saying on Double D's thing in the chat, imagine 30 acres of rocky forested mountainside that For a fact, I know there's at least 7 caves on, not counting the closed up coal mine. And in a D&D world, how many of those caves have intelligent, hateful ass humanoids living in them? It could be like the caves of chaos. There could be 3 tribes of orcs living on that 30 acres, and you don't know shit and you're just wandering through. Oh, yeah, it's death sentence. You could have what's his name's kobolds in there. Tucker's kobolds could be hanging out in there somewhere, just waiting to throw a box full of freaking vipers at you for fun, and you're never going to be able to camp out on that region because as soon as the sun sets, that's when they're coming out. So, yeah. In Baptism of Fire, they have a class called the Woodsman, and that is 100% just what they do. They survive in the woods, they hunt in the woods, and depending on how you roll for character advancement, they can have like fairy lore or monster lore, things like that. Yeah, it would be like wandering into the 1860s. You're just walking along through Lakota Sioux territory, just waiting. At some point, a warband is going to show up, and it's going to end bad for you. AD&D and Fantasy Kentucky, oh yeah, it would work. I've done it. Just find yourself a good topographical map of the region that shows the elevations and everything, and then rename all the cities into something fantastical and throw some orcs and dwarves in there. You're good.
Yeah, I had a friend who ran a camp. I hadn't played it. He called Medieval America, and the idea was that when the Viking settlers came over, it lasted longer, and basically all the tribes picked up like metalworking, and like all the they started making armor and the weapons, and they had like basic like arquebuses and stuff by the time the Europeans showed up again. So it's like a much more advanced civilization, and it's all about this big war that like went on between them. It was a very interesting idea.
Well,
Because they
you
were
could
basically
have
in a position to actually defend themselves, and they had fewer but like much bigger kingdoms going on, so they were
right.
able to put up an actual fight.
Well, you could just play in a setting and say that the red-skinned humans that live in that region are just as advanced as the pale-skinned people. Like that's what Gary Gygax did. Have you ever read the description of a Flan human?
No, I don't remember that one.
Basically Native American. Skin the color of polished wood, dark straight hair, and except I think he said they could have light eyes. But they were dark-skinned people.
Was that from Greyhawk?
That's Greyhawk. The Flan who were the original people who lived in the Flaness were very dark-skinned. And then you had the Aarti, and they were basically like Roman. They were kind of olive-complected, so like your Mediterranean-type people. Then you had the Selouise, and they were Viking-like, except they had afros. So they had pale skin and pale eyes and pale hair, white or yellow, but it was tight knit and very, very curly. So they had afros pretty much. And then you had the Backloonish, and they were kind of your not Arab, Asian type people, or Arab, just Middle Eastern or something like that. I mean, it was all there. I mean, most people, like I always run my games in the Sheldamar Valley, and most of the people in the Sheldamar Valley had integrated to the point that it was like, whatever, Right? Like no one really cared. But there were some kingdoms that were hardcore about maintaining their ethnicity. Like Theocracy of the Pell, they were mostly Flaness people, and they were not into the whole mixing bloodlines or anything like that. And
Raptor Jesus is redeeming himself now.
Or just play Boot Hill because that's an awesome game. Boot Hill is awesome, but if I don't run the One Ring, the next runner-up is Deadlands. But I'll run it like Boot Hill and be a little sparing with the supernatural stuff, at least in the beginning.
Boot Hill is weird because that kind of straddles the line between an RPG and a skirmish game.
The first couple editions for sure.
Yeah, it's not really a full-on RPG yet. It's largely a skirmish game.
The third edition is a full-on RPG.
I've
That
only
first
played
one
the
that
first.
was like, I don't know, 20 pages. And it was just basically rules for gunfights.
Yeah.
There wasn't really, it was like roll your reflexes
And
and
some
your
gambling
whatever.
stuff.
And then here's a list of pistols and here's how you shoot people.
Yeah, here are the
And
rules.
it
You can play
really
cards
was
or
a
shoot
skirmish
people in
game.
the face. Your choice. Hey, Crafty Gamer.
That's why I roll when a lot of players say some variation of the DM is trying to kill us. Fantasy worlds are a meat grinder. Unlike, well, shit, fantasy worlds aren't a meat grinder. The Dark Ages of this world was a meat grinder. I mean, think about, hell, not even the Dark Ages. All you got to do is think about the Donner Party, which was not the only time some shit like that went down. The war between the Mormons and the United States government.
Oh, yeah, Green Mountain. That's some fucked up shit.
The wars between the tribes and the U.S., then the war between the states. I mean, there's a million ways to die, and that's not even including typhus and all the various diseases that you could get and die from. And it's like, so living on Earth until very recently, maybe the last 100 years, has always sucked. It's never been great,
A lot of it's pretty rough even now.
Even now in most of the world, yeah. We're Americans for the most part, so we get to sit here and be like, whatever. But yeah, the Dark Ages set in Appalachia with the monster manuals in effect. Yeah, I mean, boy, oh boy, whew, that would be rough. That would be rough, right? And still, Lexington, you could call the city, some fantasy name, but it'd be right on the big river. And you might even say if you crossed the river, you would be in another kingdom. So instead of Cincinnati, it could be, the city of Cincinnatus or something like that. And that could be a totally different kingdom on the other side of the giant river, which we call the Ohio River. And then as you go west in the realm, it would get flatter and swampier and farmlands. But east, you would have that big mountain chain. But if you crossed it, it would go down to swamplands and then the ocean. And then the people, you could have the Moon-eyed people could be like elves. The ones the Cherokee talk about. I went off on them a while back. And then you could have normal humans. And then you could have dark-skinned humans. That would be like the Native American types. But they would be just as technological for the most part. Or maybe they would be barbaric tribes. But they would know how to work steel and stuff. I mean, and you could make each state, like Kentucky, could be a kingdom. And break it into little duchies and stuff. And then Tennessee could be a different kingdom. Ohio could be a kingdom. You could take that whole region right there and just make it a fantasy realm and throw a bunch of orcs on it and be like, here we go. You could say that everything north of the Ohio River is dominated by like a giant empire of hobgoblins who like to march around with their blue flags. Bring the Civil War into it. The Hobgoblin Kingdom, the Empire of the Hobgoblins is the Empire of Yankee. And then the player characters can spend all of their time fighting the Yankees.
Oh, there was a old Star Trek episode where they did that.
The Yans and the Kangs. Yeah. The original Star Trek had the best stories,
Except for the third season.
Yeah, but even so, that kind of game really calls for each player to make multiple characters. Yeah. Well, that's how AD&D is played, man. People don't seem to understand that, especially if they never played back in the 80s. But it was not uncommon for a DM to tell you to make like 3 characters. just to have a couple in the background. Chomp chomp at you too, Shark. Semper Fi, my crayon eating friend. Comrade in arms, brother in Christ. Deep Space Nine was good. For the newer Star Treks, Deep Space Nine was
Yeah,
good.
that's my favorite out of all of them. I actually am not a huge fan of Next Generation, to be perfectly, with a couple of really good episodes aside.
There were a couple of episodes that were okay, but overall it was far inferior to like the original Star Trek.
Yeah.
Even
And the
though
cast is insufferable.
I am a Riker fan.
Of POS.
You know, Riker was the only one on Next Generation that I gave really a shit about. Because Riker was basically just Kirk.
Yeah,
except he wasn't the captain; he was second command. But he was still. What was Riker doing? Going to worlds, banging bitches, you know, whatever. You know? I mean, he was living that Kirk life, getting into fights, whatever, right?
I hated Troy so much.
I just
found
didn't
that character
see
so
a
annoying.
reason for her. You know, it was like, yeah. I didn't like her, her mom. Of course, we all hated Will Wheaton.
Ugh.
I thought Dr. Crusher was hot though. Riker is a master of war crimes. Yep. Yep. Dr. Crusher was hot though. Beverly Crusher, the tall redhead. I mean, why not? You know. But yeah. Just, I remember when they announced Next Generation was coming out, I was so stoked. And I watched like the first episode and I just felt like my heart sink into my guts. I was just like, this is going to suck. But maybe I built myself up way too, you know, my expectation.
Well, all the spin-off Star Treks, or at least the legitimate ones, which I'll count up to and including Enterprise. After that, to me, it's just a joke. But they were all weak. Their first season, they started kind of finding their feet by the second season. Usually by season 3, it took off.
I don't understand why. I feel like I could write a better Star Trek show than whoever was writing them. For most of the Star Trek shows. It's like, look at what's his name. He went from Family Guy to the Orville, and the Orville's probably the best Star Trek show since the original.
Yeah, I like the Orville. Didn't see the last season of it.
Tasha Yar died for our sins. Tasha Yar's so stupid. That chick wanted her character killed because she said she didn't want to be typecast as the ditzy blonde. It's like, you dumbass. And then she went on to make a couple guest appearances and basically not do anything. It's like, whatever.
Yeah, I didn't think Enterprise got a fair shot. It was really starting to pick up when they canceled it. But the nature of TV was changing.
I liked Enterprise. I was down for Enterprise. You know what I mean? It had
just about
actors I liked.
War. Yeah, they
had the Andorians in it. They were like a major faction.
Yeah, I really liked Shren. Or was it
right,
Shren?
and I like the Andorians. Yeah. Like in Star Trek Online, my captain's Andorian. Even though I'm flying around in a Jim Hadar carrier, I'm an Andorian. That's Starfleet. Oh, I love my Jim Hadar carrier. I don't know how good it is anymore, though. It's been like a year since I played. But back in the old days, I don't know if you ever played that game, but the mission where you had to defeat the Planet Eater, you know, the big giant metal tube monster.
Well, I could solo. Online?
Yeah, I could solo that
I played Star Trek Online for a couple years. I had a whole bunch of Foundry missions that did really well. I had the top 3 slots at one point.
Nice.
And then
I could kill.
They eventually killed the
Planet Eater.
All interest.
Those
were like some of the best missions in the game. A lot of those were way superior to the stuff that Cryptic was putting in.
You know what? Sometimes I just like to journey about and destroy Klingon ships. You know, you just fly around and you see a little red, you know, whatever near a planet, and you just whip ass over there, warp whatever, and then drop out, and there's like whatever's there. And, you know, launch all fighters and bombers and circle at range with your pulsar cannons, and you know, just eat them up. Of course, like I said, I was playing a Jem'Hadar carrier, so I had like 4 wings of fighters and 4 wings of bombers, plus shit tons of actual. The beam weapons I had, I think, were pulsars. They ignored enemy shields, so it was like, yeah, get effed. You know what I mean?
Did you ever play,
everything on that ship was purple. Everything on the ship was purple. So it was like, but I played for years to get all that too. And then I also dropped about $100 in boxes. So, you know,
I never opened the boxes. I wanted.
Oh man, I got addicted. That's why I stopped playing. That's why I stopped playing the game, because I was like, I am spending way too much money on these loot boxes. I need to stop. I like the less developed industrial sci-fi setting. Babylon 5. Yeah, Babylon 5 is a lot more near future. And I love near future. That's why I'm always talking about what's it called? 2300 version of Traveler, or Expanse, things like that. That's what this starship's all about. Well, I got my hat on there, but I mean, because as you can see, instead of being like this, which would mean it has artificial gravity, it's like this, which means there is no artificial gravity on this ship. It has to generate gravity by acceleration or deceleration, which is the only plausible way, according to our known physics, to fake gravity. That or spinning, which is the same concept.
I know you're against it. I can let artificial gravity slide on if it's a fairly advanced technology.
But I'm kind of an anal bastard when it comes to certain things. Me and Shauner argued about this shit before he went his way. This was one of the main things we debated about Traveler. And I always told him he's playing Traveler wrong, and he'd always laugh at me. He's like, how am I playing Traveler wrong? I'm like, artificial gravity, bro? Come on. You know that's not even possible. Not even 10,000 years in the future. It's just not possible. He's like, it doesn't matter. We're telling stories. I was like, nah. Tech level wise, what? I'm not very familiar with Traveler. How close is B5 to default Traveler? Nowhere near. Default Traveler is like 20,000 years in the future, some shit like that. The Imperium is literally 1 million star systems. There's like technology like that would blow your brain, you know, like alien tech that can just disintegrate your ass from existence.
Yeah, the Imperium's huge. It could take you years to cross it.
Yeah, literally, if you started out on Earth and you were trying to go behind the claw into the Spinward Main, it might take a year. The only thing they did realistic there is they made it where there's no way to send messages faster than the speed of travel. So that's true, you know, because they never figured out some weird. I mean, you could argue about, like in Dune or something, they argue about what is it called? Tachyon entanglement or some shit like that. Or photon entanglement. Basically, quantum entanglement, where you can send a message here and it'll show up there without like some weird.
They're pretty sure that can't be done, though. There's no.
Yeah, but at least they try to make an argument.
But they try to.
They hand wave it around a little bit, but in Traveler, no, man. So you can literally commit a bank robbery on one planet, jump into your ship, jump 3 worlds away, and the people on any of those worlds for the longest time are not going to know if you're even wanted or anything, because the information, you can outrun it. If you stay off the main lines. If you're on the main lines, you're not going to outrun the courier ships, because those things are like jump 3 and never stop. They're just. But 2300 Traveler is literally the year 2300 AD, and Technology is really not much more advanced than we are now.
Yeah, they've just discovered faster than light. And
Yeah, they've
starting to,
just
go out and
discovered
crash
the
it.
stutter warp, and like most of the Earth is still balkanized, even though it's changed because of World War III a bit. Like Texas is an independent country, but most infantrymen fighting wars out in the stars are using assault rifles. Like the big one that America is known for, that everyone likes, like the Mark 9 or the M19 assault rifle or whatever. It's basically just the gun from Aliens.
Yeah.
It literally fires a 9x4.5 cartridge and has a built-in 30 millimeter grenade launcher on it. I mean, and other than very, very special power armor units, most of the guys are just wearing, flak jackets, a helmet with maybe some targeting shit. So it's really like The Expanse. It's just not that. And there's no artificial gravity. And France is the most powerful nation in existence because of how racist
Does
they were during
2300
World War
use the
III.
same tech level system as Basic Traveler? Because in Basic Traveler, I think the Imperium Max is at 15.
They use the same tech level, but it doesn't mean the same thing.
Okay.
Like Tech 9 in 2300 does not mean the same thing as Tech 9 in James, you see my message in Discord. If it's the one about where to send the box, yes. If it's another one, then I haven't looked. As Shark was saying, I haven't been around a lot. Well, one, I've been helping my wife out a lot, and two, getting ready for company. You know how that is, and we went out last night, and we were out for a couple hours. I just been busy, but you'll note I've already put up like 4 videos today.
Yeah, you're cranking them out.
So yeah. The Artemis one, they copyright claimed it.
Really?
But I told them, hey, this is fair use. So some bands do that. Whereas the Molek Dama Sudno video, they copyright claimed it, but they give permission for anyone on YouTube to use it. So basically, if my channel was monetized, they would get the money.
Okay.
But I don't have to do anything to like. But if the band Artemis does not argue with me within the next couple weeks, it'll be open to the whole world. They block it from parts of the world. And I'm not sure which parts because people are watching it. I mean, I guess Russia can still watch it, and they're like my number 3 subscribers.
Do you have a lot of Russian viewers?
Yep, it's America, Canada, Russia. And since Russia doesn't respect most copyright law, I'm sure they're like, yeah, do what you want, man. Knock yourself out. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't think this is political to say. I despise copyright law. I think you should have copyright over a thing for a few years. And then after that, no more. The fact that Disney has managed to keep copyright on these movies for 30, 40, 50 years is insane. Especially since the things I'm talking about aren't even original creations. It's shit that Grimm fairy tales wrote back in the 1500s.
Is out of line when they pull that.
Yeah, and they do some stupid ass shit every couple of years just to keep the copyright up.
Well, I like the things author's lifetime plus 70 years. I think that's a good idea because you don't want to write books and then have just some random jackasses just using all your stuff.
Deckard, you're right. I think Russia recently passed Vietnam up. Vietnam's either 4 or 5 now. And the Brazilians are still in the top 10 too. So I think the British are mad at me because every time a British person gets on and they start talking politics, I rip their ass about how stupid their country is. So Britain might be done. because they'll get on and want to talk politics. I'm like, dude, you live in a country where you don't have freedom of speech and you can go to prison for posting a spicy Pepe meme. Shut the F up. You're not allowed to talk to me about shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're trying to trademark Loki and Thor. And it's like, you can trademark that specific version of Loki or Thor, but you cannot trademark Loki or Thor because, Norse gods. Just like you can't trademark orcs. No matter how hard you try, you can't do it. Orcs are just not trademarkable. You can't trademark elf. You can't trademark dwarf. You can't trademark most things from mythology. If it's an actual mythological creature, you can't trademark. That's why Wizards of the Coast, the only things they can trademark are the original creations in the Monster Manual, which is like the Beholder, the Mind Flayer,
the Bullet,
Owlbear, but they can't actually, like the Periton, they can't trademark the Periton because that's Slavic mythology. So they can't trademark that. They can't trademark a lot of things. Most of the Monster Manual cannot be trademarked.
What's fun is that all the original, the trademarked monsters from the Monster Manual were all based off a bag of weird little plastic Japanese monster toys they bought because they were like, there weren't miniatures for monsters and stuff when they started this game. So they went and bought these like crappy little plastic things and painted
I remember them very well.
And they made up monsters around them.
Yep. The freaking Rust monster.
Yeah, with the propeller.
Had a little propeller on its tail. It was like you had the owlbear and the weird winged thing. It was supposed to be like a pterodactyl, but not. Like, there was some weird-ass monsters in that bag. Yeah, I had them. And in the old farmhouse I lived in Kentucky, they're probably completely disintegrated by now, but I buried them all in the side yard for some reason. Because, when you're a kid, you do stupid. Like, I buried all of my Star Wars toys at one point or another. I just buried them in the yard somewhere. I don't know what I was doing. The only action figure I had as a kid that I never buried, and I don't know where it went, is I had a Muhammad Ali action figure, and it had the thing where you push the button on the back.
I remember those, yes.
And he would do
and they had
fly like a float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and all that shit.
You could like move them.
Yeah, I had my Muhammad Ali toy because
off the thing. Yeah,
I'm a Kentucky guy. Muhammad Ali is from Kentucky, so hey. Cassius Clay Boulevard is still in Louisville. And at the top of the street sign, it's got the silhouette of Muhammad Ali. Even though I think George Foreman was a better fighter, but, we can get into that. I think that Ali won the Rumble in the Jungle because he showed up a week early and he played the audience and the people.
Did you ever see, I can't remember the guy's name, it was some Irish dude. It's the story Rocky is very loosely based on. But Muhammad Ali did a exhibition fight against this like low-ranked fighter, this Irish dude from, I think, Boston. And it went the full distance. And a lot of people think the guy won. A lot of people think they just gave it to Ali. But it was very, very close regardless. I can't remember the dude's name, but Rocky was very loosely based on that.
Yeah, well, you also had the actual Rocky Marciano. Because, if you're going to talk about boxing, some white guy always got to pull Rocky Marciano out of that. But Rocky Marciano was a heavyweight, undefeated, like 100 fights, and like most of them by knockout.
Yeah.
And those dudes that do the computer shit, they put in all the stats for Muhammad Ali and Rocky Marciano, and Rocky Marciano won. Like they did like 1,000 fights, and then whoever wins most. So they're saying if Marciano had still been in his prime and shit when Muhammad Ali came out, Marciano would have whipped his ass.
Then there was,
that was a whole different
Cinderella Man on. What was that guy's name?
That
was a movie that really annoyed me. I think Ron Howard is a really good filmmaker, or he died recently. But I did not like his biopics because he took way too many liberties with stuff. And I understand that when you have to alter some things when you're telling
Right.
the stories, but he like outright like slandered some people who did not deserve it. Like Max Schilling, the German boxer in that.
Yeah.
They made him out to be this like monster, horrible person, and he wasn't at
Whereas
all.
in reality, he had been cool as shit with
It was
him.
they were good friends. He almost quit boxing when he killed that guy. He was like heartbroken about it. But they made it out like he like got off on it and stuff. And that's not fair to do that to a real person. I mean, I understand you're telling a story, but that's an actual person.
Well, what's his name? Owens? The guy who was in the 30 whatever Olympics.
Oh, Jesse Owens, yeah.
And said that the German athletes treated him very well. But the Americans treated him like shit. You know, it was like so weird, you know, because he said he's there and the German athletes are not treating him poorly at all. They're treating him very respectfully, you know, whatever. But then he comes back to America and ends up just being poor. And no one, you know, the only reason they cared is because then they could use it as a propaganda thing. But otherwise, he was just another Negro that the government didn't give a shit about. I mean, to put it plainly and bluntly, they didn't care. They're just trying to use him. You know, like when he won all of his races, like the German athletes would be some of the first dudes to walk up and shake his hand and, you know, be cool with him. Yeah, Jesse Owens. Yeah. I mean, that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy, really, is how some of our athletes got treated back in the day. But I mean, you know, it's different time, and I'm not going to hold myself accountable for it. But I can point out when something wasn't right. You know, Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey was the guy who learned to fight because he was a bull for the train system, which meant he used to beat the shit out of hobos and chuck them off trains and shit. And then he started boxing, and it turned out that dude was a brute. Yeah. Jack Dempsey dominated for a long time.
My mom.
And then the other one, Butterbean. You remember Butterbean? He was just a big, fat, baby-looking dude, and he would get in there and just knock people out.
Yeah. My mom met Jack Dempsey a bunch of times. She used to go, her and her friend used to go to a bar he owned. She said he was a really dirty old man.
Well, he would be. I mean, during his young life, his whole job was just to beat the shit out of hobos and chuck them out of trains.
Yeah, but they used to go to his bar in New York all the time.
But yeah, Butterbean, that's a funny guy because he gets in the ring and you're thinking, "There's no way this guy's going to have a heart attack."
Yeah, he's like a blob. He
is like the X-Men blob enemy. You remember that character, the bad guy, the blob? That's Butterbean. He gets in there just looking like the blob, and then if you're fighting him and you make one F up, you're done. He just takes you out.
Yeah, you couldn't even like see his shorts because his stomach, which is
fat. They said the same thing about Fedor Emelianenko. They're always like, "How is this guy beating the shit out of everybody and he's fat?" And it's like, because that fat is over muscle. Yeah. That's what's going on there, you know. And Fedor himself in interviews would be like, "Hey, Lep," would be like, "Hey, you know, my problem is between fights, I like to eat, you know?" And so he's still working out and training nonstop, but he's freaking got a little bit of a gut on him, but then he gets in with that MMA shit and starts wrecking people. They called him the Last Emperor because he would come in with the Federation of the Russian Federation flag and his big Orthodox cross. He'd take his cross off and hand it to the coach when he got in the ring. That guy, I saw him. It was close up on Fedor's face. A dude hit him right in the chin, and Fedor didn't blink. And it didn't knock him out. He was just like, and I was like, that is not human. How do you not blink when somebody just unloads right on you? They're just whack. But yeah,
A lot of training, apparently.
he whipped a lot of people's ass. He whipped a lot of people's ass. I used to love watching Fedor Emelianenko fight. He lost though. I mean, he wasn't undefeated. He lost. You know.
It happens.
RPG Dad, Butterbean Rock. Well, Johnny Knoxville.
RPG Dad, what's up, man?
RPG Dad. Does that mean that you play RPGs and you're a dad, or are you the daddy of all RPGs? Maybe you should change your name to RPG Daddy. That sounds dirty though, don't it? Like those
just got a dirty
shirts.
mind.
They've got these shirts that show like a dungeon master looking dude spanking a barely dressed elf. And on the shirt it says they call me the dungeon daddy or some shit like that.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, it's like that.
Well, talking about RPGs,
Yeah,
James, I came up with an insane idea for that gnome. I'll be the best of smiths with it.
The best of smiths. Aren't you already going for rune crafting?
I'm also a blacksmith.
Nice. Well,
I
that's a good thing with skill-based systems is if you want to spread things out, you can.
Yeah, but I got a way to get it to where I can roll 13d10 for just blacksmithing.
I would ban your character right then. As soon as you told me you could do that, I'd be like, you're banned. Make a new character. We're not playing this.
In fact, make two. The next one's dead too.
Yeah, make two characters. Make two more characters, and I'm going to pick the weakest one, and that's the one you're playing.
It's not
Nobody got time for that shit.
It's not like it's overpowered in combat.
Hey, combat ain't everything. There's a whole world out there that does not involve fighting orcs.
True.
So,
But I just found this crazy because a friend talked about having this thing called in this game object fetishism. Basically, it just makes your character think something's like supernaturally good, and it's just like I could take that, use it on my say it's my blacksmith's hammer, and then I could just have like a +5 to my blacksmithing.
Yeah, banned. I hope your DM watches my show so that she can hear me say that. Banned.
I don't think he does, but
well, isn't he Brazilian?
yeah.
I got a lot of Brazilians that watch my show according to my
Oh, fair.
what's it? So you don't know.
That's fair, I guess.
He might be one of them. And for whatever reason, it appears when I talk to Brazilians, like Dungeons and Dragons is not the most popular role-playing game down there.
Oh no, obviously not.
They play like RuneQuest and Rollmaster and
I think their most popular is actually White Wolf.
You already think my real name is backwards. Okay, you must have changed your name, but yeah, there was somebody that always said your name seems backwards. I shouldn't say anything though, because one of my closest friends growing up, and he still would be one of my closest friends if he didn't live in Pittsburgh. So I haven't seen him in like 10 years, and it's hard to say. Like, I'm sure if he showed up at the door, I'd let him in and we'd be best buddies again, but I just haven't seen him. But he had two first names. And a lot of Jamaicans are like that. Like, instead of having an actual last name, their name will be like Patrick Mark. And it's like, ain't you got a last name or a middle name? Nope. You have 3 accounts. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I'm an RPG dad too. Except I would be an RPG grandpa because I got 5 grandchildren. That's right. My daughters are doing their part. Are you? Yeah, a little bit of OGG. A little bit of Starship Troopers there. I'm doing my part. Are you?
And to be fair, James, there would be a big drawback if I did go that route.
It's too late, left. You're banned.
I'm banned.
Don't even try and argue it. You've
Uh,
already been banned. Make a new character. And he can't be a gnome.
Aw.
You've lost your gnome privileges around here. You know? I thought you could handle it and not take advantage, but apparently I was wrong. So now you have to play human. And no magic items or magic at all.
Well, some cursed ones, maybe.
Unless they're cursed. Yeah.
I'll take
Yeah.
cursed. Can I have Bonesaw?
The bone saw.
Here's something
Right
I
through
never
the
thought
neck.
about cursed items in D&D. What kind of a dickhead magic user do you got to be just to sit around cranking out cursed magic items all day? What kind of a
Lafontaine?
jackass does that?
Well, only one man knows, and that man unfortunately is passed. O'Neill Flynn. There you go. Which I think your name should be Flynn O'Neill, obviously. But then again, that would make more sense. But for some reason, your parents, I don't know what's going on with that. I'm not saying all, but that stuff never existed within the beforehand. Have you ever watched any of those? Oh, yeah. Not your Echo. The 5e crowd. The problem with popularity is you attract a bunch of crazy people. And I say that as somebody who technically you could call me crazy since I have been treated for PTSD, but I earned it. I earned it. I worked hard for it, right? I'm just talking about weirdos like that really don't want to role play. They just want to be part of whatever they think is the cool thing at that moment. And they like, I mean, I could go on for a year about freaking safety tools. In the 80s and 90s, we didn't need safety tools. No one needed safety tools.
A big part of it is that people are playing online now with people they don't know. Because it used to be you played these games, you had to play, at somebody's house with your friends who you probably already knew for years. So
there were no computers.
This stuff didn't happen. It's probably a different situation now with, like just when you're getting games with random people, you're just going to encounter like really whacked up people you wouldn't be hanging out with otherwise.
Yes, the game community, and I am one of them, or at least used to be before I grew up and become super cool, has always attracted outsiders and people you would call fringe. And I definitely in high school was one of those. I was not popular. I was not handsome. I weighed every bit of 130 pounds. And I was just an oily, greasy looking little nerd that played D&D. Now Hungar was the handsome, popular kid. But, a result of that is that, there were weirdos that played the game, and you had to recognize that was a possible thing. You could run into some weirdos, or you could be the weirdo. Now, though, it's different because what Doc said is just right. I can't say it any better. Now, instead of being exposed to 8 weirdos, you could reasonably be exposed to thousands.
Yeah.
Which
Plus,
means the odds of running into a really, really malicious weirdo, a malignant weirdo, go way up.
Plus, it's usually people you already knew and were friends with, and like for years at that point anyway. So if there was something really disturbing about them, you already knew it and had accepted it at that point.
Right. Like, yeah, absolutely. The guys I played D&D with, we were all weird in our own way, but it's not like any of us were like, weird in a way that would have like offended or worried anybody. We were just not very popular guys that rode our bikes around and played D&D, it wasn't like any of us were trying to do any like pervo shit in game or anything like that. So when I hear the horror stories about that I'm always like, wow, you know, people will make videos talk about when the sex scene comes up, just fade to black, right? And I'm like, that's what we always did. And also,
Yeah,
sex
nobody
scenes were
wanted to
not.
sit around the table talking about that shit. That was creepy and weird.
Yeah, it's like, and plus, it just didn't happen that much.
Yeah.
It was very rare for any player in the game to go out of their way to be involved in a sexual relationship with some NPC. It was just not a thing because, I mean, we were 14 and 15 years old. We hadn't really thought about it at that time very much, you know? So it was very much like storybook. You know, your character falls in love with a princess and then you court her and then eventually you get married and any of the naughty stuff is not even mentioned. And
Just
maybe
to the point where
you
you have
roll a
kids.
die and she has kids. And, you know, so my D&D game in that way was a lot more like Tolkien. You know, we know that Rosie that worked at the tavern married Sam and they had 15 kids. We know that. But we don't need to know about everything Sam and Rosie was doing in their bed.
Yeah.
That's how I ran my D&D game. It's like, yeah, my buddy Marcus's character had numerous children. When his character got old and died, he ended up playing one of his own sons. You know, with Haas's character because Hungar was playing a dwarf. So when the human died at 70 something, Hungar's character was like 150. He was just middle age at that point, you know? So, but because I used level caps religiously, he was still only like level 6 or 7. So it wasn't that big of a deal, you know? It was like, okay. I think Doc is trying to run cover for inserting cat girls into Middle Earth game. No, if you want to play a game with cat girls, you play Battletech.
That's BattleTech. Yes, I
That's
keep all
BattleTech.
my cat girls in BattleTech.
Yep. There's a whole freaking outer realm bunch that travel around with cat girl prostitutes and entertainers and all 9 yards.
Elven hookers is another story, however.
Yeah, elven hookers, that's another story. You would think elves would have more respect for themselves than to become hookers, you know? Like, but then again, I think that is my Tolkien coming out, you know, where elves are like semi-angelic beings. No way you could get me to play like an anime game.
Yeah.
That just is never happening. I'm not
Well,
playing
I
Big
always-
Eyes, Small Mouth. I'm not playing Bubblegum Crisis. It's
My,
just not happening.
My elves were always more like closely related to, in my games, were like more closely related to like the She, like the Irish She, where they were kind of like dicks. And even if they were on your side, you really didn't want them around.
In my homebrew, my elves were 100% based on the Irish myth and weren't even from the world. They could travel between their world and our world through Fey Gates and mushroom
Yeah,
rings.
that's
and
how I
shit like
did it.
that.
There were some communities that lived permanently, but
There were some
very
that lived
secret.
permanently, but yeah, they were very
They
secret.
didn't just, hang out with mortals. They didn't get on with them.
Right. And if you met an elf in the woods, whether he was Seelie or unseelie, you wouldn't know until he said hello or tried to peel your face off. It could go either way. And the unseelie would kidnap human children and then turn them into redcaps. And that their armies in the Fey world would be made up of redcaps, which had been human children that were corrupted. Yeah, that was my thing. And there were no halflings. So if you wanted to play a shorty, you had to be a gnome. And there was only one god and then a bunch of demons. And it was based on like 10th century Kievan Rus shit, the empire, the Tsardom or whatever that stretched across the northern part of the continent. Because south of the mountains that divided the empire from the south was a gigantic empire of hobgoblins, which I directly based on the Ottoman Empire. And if people have like problems with that, have problems all you want. But they were an incredibly expansionistic, racist empire where hobgoblins ruled and everyone else was slaves, including goblins and whatever. And yeah, so there was the constant war between the human kingdoms and the hobgoblin empire that was always pushing out in every direction. So
I kind of like merged orcs and goblins into one thing. I always just used orc as kind of like a slur that they didn't care for. They were actually goblins.
well, that's very Tolkien because you have orcs, which are goblins, and goblins, which are orcs. And then you have the Auric, and they're actually half orcs or half goblins, bred with humans. And unlike the movie, no, they're not pulled out of a muddy whatever. The Sauron and Saruman both experimented with eugenics, typically with captured human females from the Dunlending tribes in the Hill People. And then, of course, Sauron, it was captured Easterlings or Southlands. So, yeah. That's why they could... there were some of the half-orcs that looked human enough that they could pass as an ugly human. And they would be used as spies and sent into different towns and stuff. Like Bree. There was one in Bree. Yeah. That was there looking for Mr. Underhill or whatever, you know. Yeah. And that's why if you read the book, you'll remember how the goblins from Moria kind of outright despised the Uruk-hai of Saruman, but they despised the goblins back. You know what I mean? It was like there was tension there between Grishnak and what's his name, and then they end up killing that one goblin, and they're like, "Meat's back on the table, boys." Yeah,
what really bothered me in that scene? The orc mentioning a menu.
Right?
Do orcs hang out in a lot of restaurants where they have menus? I'll have the leg of halfling.
Leg of halfling, please.
I don't know. Actually, the orcs do have a society. It's just very military.
Still,
it's a very militant society. So.
I have problems with the menu thing still.
I mean, okay. Is it possible that there are in Mordor, in some of the big cities,
Starbucks?
Taverns? You know, like, I don't know, eateries where
I think Mordor would be full of Starbucks.
Well, I mean, Starbucks is evil, so yeah, but you know, Cracker Barrel, get out here.
They have work box. Come on.
Everybody knows that Cracker Barrel was founded by crackers. But anyway, yeah, you would think in like Minas Morgul or Angmar or something, there would have to be eateries. You got to feed that army. You know what I mean? So, are we eating potatoes tonight, or are we eating man flesh? That could be an option, you know? Potato. So, I wonder if I identify as they, them, could I vote more than once? Yeah, it's like the law in California where it's illegal for them to ask for your driver's license. So if you get pulled over by the state troopers, just tell them you're on your way to vote. Like, you know, I thought Uruks were bred in blue cities. Oh my goodness, you guys are getting no, and it's not spelled with an O, it's a U. And it actually means Uruk-hai means orc people. That's the literal translation in Black speech. The Uruk-hai, the orc people. Whereas, or high orcs. Whereas, you know, goblin is what they are, but orc is kind of a slang word for them. Dwarves would always call them goblins, but elves might call them orcs. But they were exactly the same creatures. Whether they were from Moria or the Misty Mountains, they were the same shit. And like I said, both Sauron and Saruman, well, actually, Saruman started because Sauron told him to do it, were doing eugenics by breeding goblins with humans to create the bigger, not quite, well, they weren't affected by sunlight at all. They could travel through the sun. They were as big as a human, whereas most goblins are barely much bigger than a halfling. You know, yeah,
And
they
the other
you
thing
know,
in Tolkien is that there's a lot of different. There were kind of different breeds. Like the orcs from Mordor were much more advanced than the ones you'd find like living wild.
right.
Because he had this long period over which to breed them for the traits he wanted. But they were still mixed. Like the halflings are able to pass as goblins in the armor because a lot of them were tiny like that.
Which was in that the whole thing. They hid themselves by wearing orc armor and an orc cloak, and during the day, the goblins couldn't tell because they're blinded. They're half blind anyway during the day. And then, of course, they get to the crossroads, and the Easterlings tell the orcs to pound sand, and Samwise winds them up, and the orcs attack the Easterlings, and then they manage to sneak away during the fight. Which is funny because in the animated series, the men on the road, they just look like Vikings almost.
Yeah.
But in the book, they were Easterlings. They should have been dressed more like Byzantine soldiers with like lamellar armor and, whatever. But doesn't matter. We all know what's up. But orcs, like Gandalf says, orcs are not the worst thing in the roots of the mountains. Goblins, I think that's from The Hobbit. He says that. He says, yeah, there are far fouler things in the roots of the deep than goblins. And he wasn't talking about Gollum specifically. There's a lot of stuff. Like in the Moria source book, which I'll probably do tomorrow or the next day, they go into all the crazy ass shit that lives in the ruins of Khazad-dûm. And I'm not even talking the Balrog or the 4 or 5 tribes of goblins that live there. There is some crazy ass shit that lives down there. Like supernatural, weird, like birds that drain your blood, like sturges, and shit in the water that will try and eat you. And just, all the weird, horrifying Lovecraftian shit you can think of. This guy on Twitch is saying he is from Uganda. So I have to ask him, does he know the way? You remember that meme?
Yes. Do you know the way?
Do you know the way?
1 minute.
That was funny. But yeah, the dark ones, there's all kinds of stuff. Crazy ass dwarves could be living down there still. Crazy as hell, overcome with dragon sickness and, willing to kill anyone they encounter. You don't know. It's Moria. And in the book, you basically, in the actual Lord of the Rings, you basically see about 1% of Moria. You see like the West Gate, the entry hall, the Tomb of Durin, and then the main passageway to the East Gate. You don't see like all the different levels and all the, Moria is huge. A group of characters could get lost in there and be lost for a year until they died. It's huge. There's so many levels, and the levels are miles across. So yeah, there's some bad shit in there. Dark ones, yeah. There is shit in Moria that the orcs and the goblins are terrified of. And I'm not talking about Durin's Bane, the Balrog. I'm talking about just stuff that lives in there. That even the goblins are like, yeah, F that. Not going down that area, Maybe whites, undead of some sort, But okay, so since we banned your gnome
It's not
For-
that bad.
for undue power gaming, no, for real though, 15 die to make an item. That's
13.
13. That's pretty good. Pretty
Yeah.
good. I mean, the chances of getting at least a couple successes are pretty up there.
There are some downsides, though, like the possibility of that thing breaking and causing some havoc on my character.
Well, yeah, but wouldn't you have to botch for that to be a something you'd have to even worry about?
It actually kind of dramatically increases your chances of botching. Not dramatically,
Well,
but
to
it does.
botch, you just have to roll more ones than you have successes.
It actually makes it easier still.
Right.
Easier than that.
So that's if you're playing with that rule set. The 5e rule set, the botch is you have to get a 1 on a hunger die and no successes.
Oh, we're not vampires, and it's
Right.
Chronicles of Darkness.
Right.
So I'm
I
not
know,
exactly
you told
sure
me
what
about
the
it.
botching is on that one.
It's probably more ones than successes.
That's probably right.
Because when I looked at Chronicles of Darkness, it looked very, very much like a very simplified, toned down second edition.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I'm on the website. I don't know if you know that. They have a website where you can download the rules, but not only that, you can
that's
actually
probably where
make
my
a character.
where Jen got the rules.
Yeah, you can actually make a character and like play by text
Yeah.
in the game. Like, you know, there's like accounts of storytellers that kind of keep track of stuff. And if you make a new character, of course, then you're not going to be very powerful or anything. But as you play, you can get involved in stuff that's going around, and it's like the whole world. So,
yeah,
pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff, man. But
yeah, I did do a test roll on it and got like a crit success off the bat.
Right. So I don't remember what a crit success is necessarily.
About 5. You gotta get 5 successes in a row or something like that.
Luckily, though, I do have this right here, and it tells me. So if it's a moderate thing, like replacing a car's sound system or something, that's 3 successes I need. And then here it tells you how to do it. Okay, so. All right. So a crit success is like 4 successes above what you needed or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. I printed out all the charts that I thought would be needed, and then I also printed out discipline cards and backed them and sleeved them so that when I'm sitting at the table, I have all of my characters' discipline cards in front of me so that I know how everything works. Because, like I said, I'm trying to learn to be a better player. And it's not easy because I know for a fact that I know the game rules way better than anyone else at the table, including the storyteller. And it's just like, so I have to learn not to be an asshole about it. You know?
Yeah.
If something happens, I need to trust him. And if I feel the need to debate the thing, I need to talk to him after the game, not during the game. Which is, you know, kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around because I'm typically a very action-oriented human being in real life, you know. If something happens, I like to handle it right then. I don't typically like to wait and, you know, but you know, being an impetuous person is not always good. So, yeah. It is what it is. Plus, he's running half of the group using 20th anniversary rules. and the other half of the group using 5th edition rules. So we'll see how that works. So far, it's been okay, but nothing really serious has happened.
Fair.
And I thought it would make my character weaker, and it didn't. It just made him stronger in a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, my character's still an absolute combat monster, but instead of getting 5 attacks per action, it's just I have attacks that do massive damage that you can't dodge. You know what I mean? Because I'm moving so fast, you literally just can't dodge. Which means I need a difficulty 1 to hit you, and you don't get to roll anything. So if I roll all of my combat dice and get like 6 successes, take 1 away, that means I hit you and did my normal damage plus 5. And the average health on a vampire in this game is about 5. So, yeah, I just blew you out of the water. I hope you got a lot of fortitude. So, yeah. But I don't get 5 attacks per round at plus 5 damage for potence. But I do still get to add my level of celerity to my dexterity for an attack roll if I want. So I'm rolling 11 dice to attack. And if I use that ability, difficulty 1, I need 1 success on 11 dice. So I need 1 6 on 11 die 10s. And my hand damage is aggravated. Which means I send you right to hell. You know, which is probably where vampires belong anyway. But
Anti-vampire racism.
hey, you know, my character is actually religious. Not only is he religious, but he's accepted within the Russian mafia and is friends with an Orthodox priest. In an emergency, I have a haven underneath the church that I can go to. So every now and then, I think that my character might consider just contacting the Inquisition and ratting everybody out. Because I'm like, you know, as vampires, we truly are evil. So, you know, we deserve what we get, right? But haven't done that yet. Who knows? And in 5e, you got to choose what kind of predator you are. I'm a siren, which means my character hangs out at clubs and basically seduces women and takes blood from them. And of course, I like when my victim is super excited because it makes their blood resonance choleric. And if I drink blood from a choleric person, it gives me a bonus dice anytime I use the celerity discipline because of the emotion in their blood.
Now
Powers
who's
the
power
celerity. That's not power gaming. That's just that's my preferred prey type is horny women on drugs or alcohol at a goth club that I go to. As a matter of fact, I sent a message to the storyteller the other day letting him know that I was sending my retainer out to buy me 7 days worth of Adidas tracksuits. Since I'm going by my character's Russian name now. I figured go full on with the freaking stereotype, right?
The Russian tuxedo.
Yeah. I'm just going to show up in freaking black with white stripe Adidas and hang out at the goth club up off of Orange Avenue. I mean, it's there in game. It was there back in the 90s. Passage or whatever. It was off of Wall Street. And that video I did a review of by Artemis is pretty much what the club was like. Except there was a bar and they made good peanut butter and jelly sandwiches too. But otherwise, that's why when I showed the video off, I was like, this reminds me of the 90s. This is me in the 90s. You know, like back when chicks with weird hair meant you're going to have a good time. You know what I mean? Totally different in the 90s. If she had purple hair in the 90s, it's going to be good. Have her head shaved, is going to be good. Now, that's a warning sign. You don't want to go anywhere near that.
Now.
Yeah, it's weird how it changed, you know? Because back then, that was punk. You know, that was like goth punk. You know, these were bad girls out on the town having some drinks, you know, whatever, right? You could walk up and talk to them, and who knows? Maybe you have a good time or what. But nowadays, that shit's like a freaking South American arrow frog. It just lets you know that the thing you're looking at is toxic and you need to stay away.
It's become a uniform.
Yeah,
it's an
it's
ideological uniform.
Yeah, I love it when like these young guys claim they're punk, and I'm just like, you're not punk.
They're punk.
You support every mainstream thing. That is as far from punk as you can get.
You're punk and you support communism. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah, you're punk and you support communism, even though the Ramones said "kill a commie for mommy."
Yeah. Well, they're punks in the old like 30s and 40s definition of the word.
Yeah, freaking punks in the prison sense of the world. In 40K, orcs are a fungus, and what makes them effed up is everywhere they go, they shed, and what they shed is actually spores. And if the spores land under the right conditions, you will get a snotling, a Gretchen, or an orc, depending on the condition. And then they'll start wandering around, also shedding. And they can pretty much live on anything. And like if an orc, because of the symbiotic algae that lives in its skin, as long as they have water and dirt, they can live. Because they can literally just eat dirt or any kind of vegetable matter at all and drink water, and the algae will produce the actual energy for their body to survive on. Of course, meat is better because it's a much more dense nutritional thing, but yeah. And so why that is terrible is if you're an Imperial world and orcs land on your world and wander around, you'll never get rid of them. Like, you can roll in and kill all the orcs, but the spores are out there on the wind, and given a couple of years, there'll be orcs there again. And you'll have to go kill them again. And the only way to actually ever end it would be like to basically flamer the entire world to kill every orc spore ever anywhere.
We need to get some pesticide up in here.
Right, some herbicide or something. But
herbicide.
Yeah, so that's why orcs. And also, no matter which direction the Imperium has pointed their radioscopes, they've always heard orcs. So orcs are the most numerous, most widespread race in the 40K universe.
That'd be an interesting.
They're literally everywhere.
Being a 40K orc exterminator, going around spraying orcs.
Spraying an antifungal thing, you know?
Antifungus.
Yeah, because that's what they are. They only got 2 organs in their body.
Get out the cream and flared it on your dagger.
Yeah, they've got a heart and a stomach, and the heart somewhat operates as a stomach. So, I mean, the whole point is the stomach breaks down the nutrition, and then the heart pumps it around throughout the orc's system so that, you know, and their brain emits chemicals when they fight. So the more they fight, the bigger they get. It's kind of like, say, human growth hormone orcs have orc growth hormone, but it's only triggered if they fight. So that's why Gazkul Mag Orc Thraka is as big as a freaking dreadnought. He's like 16 feet tall. You know, because no one knows exactly how big an orc could possibly get. Because as long as they got food and they fight, they just get bigger and darker. You know, because when they're very young, they're pale, snotty green. But as they age, their skin gets more scabrous and the algae in them gets darker green. And so the big older ones are always a little darker than the young ones. And of course, they keep Gretchens around just to do all the fetch me work and whatever. Because orcs don't believe they should work unless they're mech boys or pain boys. Otherwise, yeah, they ain't working. They're fighting. And snotlings, they just kind of keep around like pets. Because for some reason, orcs are just amused as shit by the antics of snotlings. Like, snotlings barely have the intelligence of a dog. And the orcs will just watch them get into shit and just laugh. You know, it's just a thing. And then they also, orcs, create all the squigs. And that's all from the same orc spores. So, depending on where the spore lands, you might get a squig hopper, a hair squig, a chewing squig, an eating squig. I mean, and they're all technically genetically related to the orc. But orcs use them for various things. Orcs don't have hair. But if they want to have hair, they find hair squigs roaming about. And the hair squigs have a tiny little tick body, but their tail is very long and luxurious and hairy. And if they hold the head of the thing to their skin, it'll bite into them and attach itself like a tick. And then it will live off of the nutrients it drains from the orc. And the orc will have a nice long ponytail. And some of them even put them on their chin so they look like they have a beard. Yeah, but they don't have hair of their own. They have to get hair squigs for that. And a chewing squig is a blobby little thing that lives and crawls around, blobbing its way around. And orcs like to chew on them because while the orcs are chewing on the chewing squig is cleaning their teeth. And then when they're done chewing on it, they just spit it out on the ground and it crawls around till the next orc finds it, throws it in its gob, starts chewing on it, you know? And then, of course, orcs are constantly shedding teeth, and that's what they use for money.
Yep.
Teeth. And the reason their economy doesn't ever get destroyed is once an orc sheds a tooth, it only lasts for a couple months, and then it disintegrates to nothing. It just falls apart into base, whatever. So you can't actually save teeth because eventually they just go away. They degrade. So if you get a handful of teeth and you want to buy some stuff, you got to go buy it. Right? And if you're broke, I mean, it's not, if you're a big orc and you need something that costs a few teeth, you can always go find some other orc and knock a few teeth out of his head.
Yep.
And then go buy the thing you want to buy, and it's good for you and the other orc because the fighting makes both of you grow. So, like, orc society is, I could go on and on. I have the original, like, Rogue Trader orc book where it gets into why they do everything. Like the Goths all only wear black because they're Goths. They're Gothic orcs. They only wear black and they only listen to like industrial metal. That's their whole deal, you know? And the bad moons are the rich ones and they prefer yellow. And then snake bites are like more savage and they like to let venomous creatures bite them just to, I don't know why they do it because they're crazy. And they paint themselves blue because they think blue's a lucky color. And then you have the rebels of Orc Society, the Storm Boys, who march in formations and wear camouflage and have military ranks and stuff because they're rebelling against the older orcs by actually behaving like they're an organized military unit. Because the orc brain cannot conceive of why you would ever wear camouflage. So when they look at those boys in their camouflage marching around, they just think of them as, punk ass kids, working their way through an issue. Most of them will grow out of it. The Storm Boys. That's what they say. Most of them will grow out of it. It's a phase. It's a phase. And
just a phase.
The orcs actually have 3 gods, and this is something a lot of people don't know. They have Gork and Mork, and Gork is cunning and brutal, and Mork is brutal and cunning. And their 3rd god, believe it or not, is the Emperor of Man. They love him. They love him. And their favorite people to fight are Space Marines, because they know if they fight Space Marines, it's going to be a good fight. And that's all they care about. Like your typical orc is not interested in landing on some planet and just putting the boot to a bunch of civilians. They will do it, but there's nothing in it.
Nothing in it.
No, they want to fight a Space Marine, because they know Space Marines are hard as nails, as orcs would say. So the more the orc fights a Space Marine and survives, the bigger he gets. And eventually he'll become a knob, which is the orc word for noble. And then eventually, if he gets big enough and he beats the shit out of his boss, he'll be a boss. Because that's how orcs work. If you want to be the boss, you got to beat the boss. And the orc philosophy on military leadership is, I'm the biggest, so I'm the boss. And there's no argument for that unless you're bigger. You can't say, well, I'm smarter, or I went to this college. No. I'm the biggest, I'm the boss. You do what I say. And all the smaller orcs say, okay, makes perfect sense. They don't even give it another thought. That's why they can't be corrupted by chaos. Because there's nothing for chaos to offer them. Because all they want is a good scrap. And maybe to eat, some eating squigs every now and then. They'll eat anything, though. Human, pigs, eating squigs, whatever. If it's biological, they'll eat it. They can eat rocks even. So, yep. And now you know a lot about orcs that you didn't really ask for. But, yep. They are one of the most interesting aliens ever accidentally created. And the funniest thing about 40K is all the guys that created 40K were basically British leftists that hated the Tories and shit. And they created like the most unabashedly right-wing game ever. Like literally every faction of 40K is right-wing as hell. You know what I mean? Except maybe the Tau, because they're kind of communistic. But like every other race is just super right wing. Like orcs, yeah, sure they might be dumb as bricks, but they have a free market economy. They're out here. They believe in personal freedom unless the boss tells you otherwise. I mean, everything's super right. They made Gasco was supposed to be a mockery of Margaret Thatcher. 30 years later, he's like the most popular orc character ever. You know what I mean? It's like all of their bullshit trying to make fun of Tories and shit backfired drastically. It's like it was all supposed to be satire, except no one took it that way.
Reminds me of the Verhoeven freaking Starship Troopers, where he's trying to mock Starship Troopers. A book he admitted he never read.
Right.
There's nothing fascist in the book, and there's nothing even fascist in his movie. Even in the movie where she was trying to portray fascism, there was nothing fascist about it. It's like he confuses fascism with just having a military.
Right.
It's like made no sense.
I think what some people thought was fascist about it was the fact that you had a tribunal and a sky marshal that kind of ran everything, and you had to be a veteran to vote and be a member of that tribunal or whatever. But at the end of the day, though, it was actually votes. It was not a totalitarian system. Votes. People could be voted in and voted out. I mean, even in the movie, when the thing at Clendathu happened,
Yeah, the Sky
the
Marshal.
Sky Marshal
resigns.
got relieved of duty right then, gone. And they elected a new Sky Marshal, you know? So it was so weird. It was basically like, it's a completely entrepreneurial system. Rico's parents, who were not citizens, were multimillionaires, and they just couldn't vote. And, you know, you could get all the money you want, go to all the schools you want. The only thing is you needed to be a veteran if you were going to vote. That was it. And honestly, that might not be a bad system,
No,
because
I
it
totally
would keep all of the welfare losers from voting, because all they ever vote for is more welfare. And eventually that shit's going to collapse.
Yeah, and
you
it
know?
wasn't even strictly military. If you weren't like for whatever reason fit to serve in the military, they'd find you something to do. You just had to do a difficult service.
Right. Like if you were barely smart enough to push a broom, they would find some base somewhere, and your job would be to push a broom on that base. And if you did it for the allotted amount of time, I think 20 years, you were a citizen. Boom. That was part of their constitution, is no one could be denied military service,
Yeah,
regardless of any issue you had.
the only thing that would prevent it is 3 psychiatrists had to agree that you were so mentally enfeebled you couldn't understand the oath. That was
Right.
the only thing that would actually bar you from attempting citizenship.
Right. And
Which
that's
basically,
perfectly fair.
yeah.
It's like anyone can earn it. Anyone, basically, unless you were basically in a vegetative state. You could give a shot. Got an interesting take for you guys regarding the election on Tuesday. Oh, God. I can hardly wait. So, yeah, that's kind of, we talking Heinlein? Yes. Now, I know when Thomas Jefferson originally wrote the Constitution, he kind of floated the idea that only landholders should be able to vote. But that was kind of, they're like, no, we're not doing that. And he also, the original thing was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. But then they wanted to get rid of that too. You know, why? I don't know. They should have left TJ alone. But
I say there were too many wigs there.
I don't know what it was. It's kind of like TJ tried to get rid of slavery too. But the representatives from South Carolina and Georgia said they'd immediately leave the compact. So he was forced to, you know, make compromises. But Thomas Jefferson, even though he owned slaves and had children with some of his slaves,
that's debatable if that happened. But
I've heard both versions.
I've heard both versions.
Yeah,
he was strictly an abolitionist.
But he couldn't even get away. He couldn't get away. He couldn't free his slaves because of how much debt he was in.
Yeah,
That's
he was
the
always
biggest
in
thing.
debt. You weren't allowed to give away property.
Right. And also under the crown rule, the slave owner was responsible for the actions of his slaves. So if you freed a slave and then the slave murdered somebody, you would be held accountable as well as the slave. So you couldn't even, before the revolution, when it was English ran, you couldn't free your slaves. And there were lots of debates about it. And one of them was, what if we freed all the slaves and we gave them wagons and food and tools, and we sent them west to settle their own land, right? And then the argument against that was, you know, if we do this, they're all just going to die, right? And that was the actual argument. He's like, these people are not equipped to survive on their own in the wilderness against hostile natives. And if we load them all up in a caravan and just send them all out, they're like, you might as well just shoot them yourself. All right. So it was like, it was a complicated mess is what it was. because a lot of the, I guess what you call northern places, like Virginia and places like that, they were not down with keeping slavery. But the southern plantation places were like, if we don't keep slavery, we're not going to join you in your revolution, which would have ended the revolution right then. Eisenhower, Democrat. Well, everyone likes Ike. So I am more reasonable.
I don't know much
than
about
most.
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower was a badass.
Not fair.
Living in New Hampshire.
I mean, you could say that about a lot of people who I might not even agree with, like politically.
Yeah.
Oh, he used to have the, well, you know, I used to be when I was a kid, Dark Sage. I don't know if you guys can see what Dark Sage is saying, but
I always see the YouTube.
yeah, Dark Sage, when I was a kid, I was what you would call a Dixiecrat. My whole family were Dixiecrats.
A lot of that would probably be Thomas Jeffersonian type of Democrat.
Right. Well, back then it
Before
was
well,
I've
not
said
even
it before.
back then. I mean, it's hard.
The
because,
Democrats fought to keep the coal mines open. That was the whole thing. And when I was a little kid, my parents, grandparents, whatever, they worked
I'm pretty
in
sure
coal
Jeffersonians have died out before that, though, so might not have been Jeffersonian then.
There was a time when the Democrats were for the working man.
Yeah, there was that.
I don't know what the hell happened, but
Well, Clinton basically threw the working class overboard and transformed the Democrats into a second corporate party.
the elitist party is what the Democrats are now. If you look at all the people in the Democrats, they're all millionaires, they're all wealthy cat ladies and shit like
Again,
that.
I don't know, because again, you have a lot of unionist type of people in
The
in
unions are backing Trump this time.
Now there's a few of them that are, but even the higher ups what I hate is actually the higher ups of the unions. It's not the average person. These higher ups of the unions are so corrupt and horrible.
They are.
Unions are businesses unto themselves.
Yeah,
my
They're
old
just a
union.
parasitic business.
but they like to basically take your money and use it against you, basically.
My own union voted overwhelmingly to support Trump, but the union
Leadership.
leaders said they just weren't going to support anybody.
Yeah,
Because I used to be a member of the IAFF. And, we vote which candidates. And usually it's not that big of a deal, but this year it was a big deal. People were like,
I'm
the
not sure if
firefighters
it's
are like,
or not.
no, we're not supporting that bitch. So my union was like, nope. So they just said, yeah. But you know what? They're mad at George Bezos because his newspaper wouldn't support anybody, and it's like,
Yeah.
newspapers shouldn't support candidates. That's normal. There should just be reporting the objective news instead of becoming, apparatchik for
Oh boy,
a
Charles.
party. It may be a hot take and a half, but I am sticking by what I said. And I should say level Yankee Democrat. Hey, man. Dark Sage, we'll see. All we can do is see. And all I can do is keep telling people, don't worry. Even if the worst were to happen and Kamala won, I believe firmly that our republic is strong enough to weather that. Because we have checks and balances, and hell, if it gets bad enough, we have a constitutional right to remove the government if at any time we don't care for it.
Actually,
I don't know. I think irreparable harm could definitely be done if Harris winds up, or if the Democrats wind up retaining any type of power over the next few years.
Well, I'm going to try and not be black-pilled by it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be either, because I think if that could happen, I think the best thing for this country is probably the secession movement at that point.
Which could happen if
Yeah,
enough
if
states agree.
If it went that way, that's where I'd stand.
If it were a
Just
peaceable separation of states.
It's hard because again, it could be peaceable, but some people might not like it, and then
Some people may not like it. It might take a year or so for people to move around, to be on whichever side.
That's not what I'm talking about either. I'm not talking about that. Sadly, I'm afraid of another Lincoln moment.
Not from her. She ain't got the balls to.
No, she probably wouldn't.
Like if DeSantis were to be like, Florida's going to be independent, F you. She ain't doing shit.
Maybe if it was just Florida, but if enough states went out, I think
She definitely ain't doing shit. If all the red states seceded, the blue union would be like 4 states,
yeah,
5 states. It'd be like, okay, good luck. What are you going to do about this?
Yeah, no kidding.
And then you'd have the issue of rural parts of those states would probably want to leave too, though.
And even the rural parts of like
California,
the whole West Coast, all the rural parts are red.
Yeah, New
Only
York,
the cities
outside
that
of
are blue.
Albany and New York City, is Republican
Red.
shit.
Yeah, as soon as you get
lots of parts
upstate
of
New York is as red as freaking
Most of California. Most of California.
Yeah,
Most of California.
still is red,
The
except for
cities on the
the
coast.
cities.
Rural areas need to join more conservative states. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If we did a peaceable divorce between blue and red, you'd have to give people some time to sell out wherever they are to move to where they want to be.
Yeah,
But once that was
parallel.
done, there's no reason we couldn't get along, you know?
Yeah.
Just
There are
everyone
actually a
in
bunch of,
Austin would have to move to LA, and all the conservatives in California would move to Texas, and shit would be okay then.
Or you know,
Maybe.
There's a
in the
bunch of
cities,
counties in
California.
Oregon that right now are trying to join Idaho.
And not just Oregon. I think Washington too has a
Parts of
few.
Washington probably too. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been trying to secede from their state and join Idaho for like 3 years now. It's like, well, we've got our own independent republic down here. You know that. The Conch Republic.
The what?
The Conch Republic.
I do not know this. What is this?
The Keys.
Oh,
Like-
well, yeah.
Like 20 years ago, the Keys declared independence and no one cared.
Yeah,
Yeah, true.
And nothing changed. But they've got their flag and everything. They are the Conch Republic. You can go. Of course, if you're a member of the Conch Republic, you're automatically a member of the United States too, and vice versa. So
It's more of a thing.
it was like a secession as a joke. It was like,
Yeah.
we're the Conch Republic, and
I
everybody's
mean,
like,
there's another place.
cool.
I think it was either in Arizona or some other place where they have this one guy who declared this small little part as independent, and it's like not really. And they're when I say their national currency is like cookie dough.
Dude, do you remember when that one dude bought like an abandoned oil rig and declared it it's an independent nation
Yeah, that
out in the
happens.
middle of the Atlantic? He's like, "Yep, this is new whatever Stan or whatever."
Yeah,
He's like, "Okay."
new oil Rigistan.
I live in what would be the state of Jefferson in California. Yeah, because just before the war, they were going to split California in two. And then World War I happened or some shit. But there was actually, like, it was going through the legislation to split California in half.
Hey, I think I'm gonna have to get off here though. I'll see you.
Well, I'm definitely going to end. It's over 2 hours.
Yeah, I gotta head out myself. I gotta do.
So
some
this
stuff.
is a great time to just break it up. But catch you guys later. Peace
Yeah,
and
see
love.
ya.
A blast as always. Later, Leth. Later, James, and everybody in chat. Everybody have a great
Yeah.
day.
Have a great day. And as usual, thanks for being a part of this stuff. Yes, you're right. But I'll tell you what, bro, Florida is catching up. We're getting to where we have as many electoral votes almost as California and Texas. So, yeah. But good night, guys. And watch my videos if you haven't. They're about the One Ring. If you like Tolkien,